And then 2014, I believe, Carry On the Grudge.
Yeah.
Did Trick feel like you now had some momentum again?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we went out and toured Carry On a Grudge, which was a different record for us, and sounds different. Tempos are a lot slower, and I loved playing it live, but I think I was missing some kind of more tempo stuff.
Okay.
So I kind of immediately went back to writing again, and kind of felt kind of like I wanted to take the energy that I had felt live and put it into the songwriting again. So I think that's why we kind of were back around so quickly, really. No.
What was the first track then that you wrote after that feeling? Or maybe that you started working on? Or?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Tinfoil Boy on the new album would probably be the first one.
And for you, for instance, with a track like Tinfoil Boy, do you start with a certain idea, with a concept, or does the music come first? And
Tinfoil Boy was a funny one. It was 2 songs, actually, in kind of written separately, and they ended up being put together. So sometimes it works like that, and you kind of make sense of it after it's put together, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
So yeah, that was a funny one on those levels. I never know. Sometimes you start with the melody, sometimes you start with the lyrics. It depends, you know.
Do you have beforehand, because I've read somewhere that you don't like to dissect lyrics, so I won't do that. But do you have ideas of what you want to talk about? Because there are certain elements or certain topics that you talk about.
Right. I think it's hard to say. What happens, I tend to find, is things keep coming up.
Okay.
When you're writing, and that kind of forms somewhere down the line of writing the album. You realise what those topics are,
right? And
you kind of start highlighting them a bit more. So I don't think I'm ever aware of what I'm going to talk about when I start writing an album.
Okay.
But it becomes clear along the way somewhere, if you know what I mean.
In that sense, then, do you ever go back and think, maybe I shouldn't talk about this, if you look back at it, or?
Well, I think my initial thought on it, I thought about this quite a lot a few months ago, and I actually kind of felt like I hadn't said enough.
Okay.
I actually felt the opposite.
Why?
I don't know. I think it's something I always quite liked. Political kind of music, but I kind of shied away from it for 2 reasons. I mean, like my generation, I suppose, were kind of apathetic towards politics, or were, because of the Iraq War and things like that. But I think I kind of love all those kind of political songwriters. I was never felt like a good political songwriter at all. But I always aspired to be one, and I wish I'd kind of given it more of a go when I was younger, maybe.
Okay.
So.
And how do you feel about it now? Because there are tracks like Drone Strike. Those. So do you try and incorporate it a little bit more now?
I give it a go, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'm working on that.
Okay.
I'm still thinking about it because. There's something special about certain artists who can do it and do it well, and I think I've said it 100 times before, but like good political songs ask you questions; they don't give you answers.
Sure.
I think, and that's quite a talent to do that, and I'm not sure it's really my role to do it.
Right.
I think I have to try too hard to do it, so it's not my. It should come easily.
Sure. Very quickly then, who were these artists for you? Who
I don't know. Like the ones that come straight to mind are Bruce Springsteen's a great one for that. Asking you kind of questions really, or Rage Against the Machine or The Clash. Those bands are all quite kind of political and make you think about what's going on.
Well, with everything you just said in mind, where did Solomon Eagle come from?
Solomon Eagle. Oh, you know what? I don't quite know. I had the painting on the front cover. I owned, not the actual painting, but I had a print of it.
Right.
Because I thought, and I'd heard the story on some TV program, and so I bought the print, and for a few years it's kind of always been in my studio and has kind of been something I look at quite a lot and get intrigued by, because I knew a bit about the character in the painting, and he was called Solomon Eagle, and his story just became was something I wanted to write a song about for a long time. And I just thought he was a very interesting character. You know, slightly mad kind of preacher on the street kind of stuff. And so I'm glad he ended up on the record. Yeah, I wrote quite a few songs about him, but that's the one that made it. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's very. Why this one? Why did this one make it then? What is it about him that you felt so inspired?
I liked the fact that he was a real person, but he had been fictionalized, is that the word? He had been used in fictitious ways before. So there was a blurring of lines between the real person and the characters that had been created. And I like the kind of myth of him kind of walking around and, you know, he was saying to people that they were all dying of plague because they were living in London, which was a den of iniquity, and it was because of their sins. And I quite liked the idea of it. And it's something about it was really interesting to me, you know, a mad kind of preacher kind of thing. I can't quite put my finger on it, but interesting character.
Sure. Well, it's interesting what you mentioned, because you say, well, you don't consider yourself to be a political writer, but then what you write about are historical figures and in a sense social things.
Yeah, I think they're kind of maybe two different things, maybe slightly. I don't consider myself a good political writer, I think is the thing. Okay. Social commentary kind of stuff, I suppose, is political, but it's easier to write about because you're kind of just summing up what you're seeing. I don't like to say that it's not political. But I don't like to say it is political.
Fair enough. But yeah, one thing I was thinking about, because there's also tracks like "Sign of the Times" and let's just go into that track, because what was the initial spark for that song? Do you remember?
I wrote that song in Detroit, and I've started that song in Jamaica.
Okay.
Weirdly, and then finished it in Detroit because I'm traveling, crazy.
Sure.
And I just remember being in a very in the present when I wrote it. I remember feeling very much in the moment, which is quite rare for me. I'm always quite looking forward or looking back, and I remember kind of writing it and feeling really kind of like a songwriter for the first time in a while. So I'm not quite sure what it's about as such, but I suppose it's some sign of the time stuff. But I don't know. I just felt really good that day.
This might be very difficult to answer then, but do you have an idea of why? Because at that point you felt kind of so much in the now and as a songwriter.
I think to some extent with that song and with a few on the album, there was a real it helped to be away from London to write it, because I was not in London for about 2-3 months, and I've been travelling around a bit, and I think that kind of helped me in some ways look back on where I lived from an outside perspective and have some clarity in the situation.
And finally then, what did you find about where you lived? What was your thoughts about London?
I don't know. I think they're in the songs if they're there. I think it was kind of more I felt I could talk about things, or I felt I could make sense of it more than I could when I was there.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does in a way, yeah. Well, very last question then, because well, the album is quite eclectic. There's different styles, and then was it important for you to have that?
Yeah, the whole album for me was meant to be like, I wanted to jump around and try some new stuff and yeah, have some fun with it. And you know, it was definitely an album that was. I mean, we only took a year to do it, so it was like a definite fun. Just throw things at it and have fun with it. But I think we've always been a bit like that. You know, there's always been an eclectic kind of vibe to the situation, and I think anyone who thinks that's new hasn't fucking bothered to listen to anything we've done before. I kind of like it for the eclecticism. It's meant to be like that.
Right. And then you, well, I keep going, but well, it's interesting what you say, because you try to have fun. This is going to be the very last question, but did your approach change to the music after taking that break?
I think your approach always changes. Okay. It's constantly changing. Yeah, I should imagine. I couldn't tell you exactly what. I think there's obviously every album I tend to go into the studio and there seems to be a slightly different way of doing things, or that comes out with good songs. It seems to all, you can't, like, if I were to go back and do an album in exactly the same way I did Panic Prevention, it wouldn't work. It's kind of, it's got to be instinctive how you do it. So yeah, it's always a bit different, but that's why it kind of is fun, you know. Always do things in a slightly different way, and I suppose it keeps it fresh, you know.
Jamie, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Great, man. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.